Hey YouTube. I've been reading up an awful lot lately about the van dwelling lifestyle. Now I'm going to my local technical college right now, and I always thought that when I moved out of my parents' house and got out of college, got a full-time job, had some money moving, that I'd probably build a tiny house and that's where I'd live. But now that I've been reading about the van dwelling movements quite a bit lately, I'm starting to consider that. Nothing is set in stone yet, but I'm considering using the Suburban and just kind of doing a trial run this spring once. I mean, it's negative 25 outside right now, but this spring when the weather is actually fairly comfortable, I might just try a week or so of van dwelling in the back of the Suburban. Now, I've used the Suburban for camping before. I did that once or twice last summer, and it works great for that. It's very comfortable, roomy. I pull out that third row seat and fold down the middle seats, and I can lie down fully stretched out in that thing. And that's including my toolbox in the very back. Now, when I came across the van dwelling stuff, it was mainly by accident that I came across some YouTube videos of it, well, last spring of 2014. And I started kind of putting that all together in my head, and I realized that I could maybe use the Suburban. So I've started to do some modifications. Not too much I can do in terms of outside work on the vehicle itself right now because it is friggin' cold out. But there is one thing that I was able to build indoors that it doesn't have to be in the vehicle right now or anything. So first I'm going to show the old one. Now what I've done is I've built a counter for it, and here's the old counter. Drag this over here. This is built out of scrap wood, and I'll talk about this hole later. But this is built out of scrap wood, as you can probably tell. Not the best paint job, not the best build job. I used it over the past year for camping in the Bourbon. It worked great for that because I just wanted to get something in there that would work for that camping trip. And it's lasted for 3/4 of a year now, and it's still, I mean, it's still solid. But I wanted something with a little more space, a few more features, and something that wasn't built out of scrap wood because this is warped. It doesn't, I mean, yeah, it doesn't sit well because the wood's so warped. You can see the screws. I mean, that's a terrible job of screwing in the panels, isn't it? It's awful. So this is the old one, and it worked. It served its purpose. I've not only camped in the Bourbon, but during lunch at school, sometimes I would go out there, take a nap, have something to eat, stuff like that. So this thing served me well, but it's time to move on. This thing, I don't know if I'll keep or just throw away. We'll find out. Now this hole, I actually had a sink, and I'll show, I built another counter, so I'll show what the sink looks like. That's all in here. So you saw the old one. Just get a picture of that in your head. Here's the new one. Much longer. I actually have to have the third row seat out of the Bourbon for this one to fit. The other one I was able to fit in there with a little room to spare with the third row seat in. This one, if I recall correctly, is a good 10 or so inches longer than the other one. Now, since I was just talking about the sink, I'll start with that. Sink. This, I don't know what size it is, but it's one of those just cheap plastic storage containers that you can get at Walmart or any number of department stores. It's been sitting in the basement for years. We can't find the lid for it, and it was going to go to the trash, so I figured, hey, custom sink. I like to reuse wherever possible, so that worked perfectly. Now the cabinet itself, cabinet counter, I'm going to call it a counter. The counter itself and the cabinets below it, it's all built out of 1-inch thick, 12-inch wide pine boards. I went and bought these at our local hardware home improvement store. I had a gift card for it, so I figured this would be a good use for it. And I went ahead and built this. I had some construction screws lying around, and I built this up in about a day. And I'm happy with it. It actually... Look, I can't... It's pretty stable. It's not going anywhere, that's for certain. It's pretty stable. It looks much better. Again, the paint job isn't all that great. Personally, I am not a painter. I can build things, I can fix cars. I mean, I'm going to school to fix heavy construction equipment, but I cannot paint to save my life. So the paint job on this is not very good. I'm not thrilled with the paint job, but it's going in a rotted out 1992 Suburban, so it's not terrible. As you can see, I painted it kind of a dark blue because the interior of the Bourbon is a dark blue. I want it to kind of match. Now, my plan is I'll get a faucet mounted on there. Get a small water pump and water tank, so I'll have running water. Probably just drain that into a bucket. Now you can also see that I'll have some appliances now. This is a tiny microwave. This thing I bought many years ago, I think for 40 bucks or whatever. It's just been in the basement. When I'd have friends over or whatever, it would get some use in the basement just for making popcorn or reheating food or whatever, because we'd always hang out down here. But lately, with everyone off at college, not in the area anymore, it's been just sitting in the basement. It's not even been plugged in. So I figured I'll use that in the Suburban. I have an outlet for it. I'll show you that later. And I have my mini fridge here. This is just one of those thermoelectric coolers. One thing to say about these, they are not very efficient. This one, I don't know how much power it uses, but it's quite a bit for its size. Now, with that being said, I found that if I stick some of those blue ice packs in there, I can keep some bottles of water, some small food items nice and cool. So it does work as a conventional cooler, and whenever I do have spare electricity to run it, it will do fine on that too. So it's kind of a double. It kills two birds with one stone. I have some storage under the sink. It's going to be about the same amount of storage as I had in the old counter there. And I also have workspace here, and the furnace is kicking on. So I can put a propane stove, I can use this as prep space, anything like that. And you can see I have the little overhang that the fridge goes on. Remember that overhang, that's going to be important when I go and show you the Suburban. Now you can also see you can see paper. I've actually placed wax paper underneath the microwave and the refrigerator because both of them have those little rubber feet to minimize vibrations. But I pretty much finished this the same way I did my other counter, and I found on that other one that those rubber feet, no matter how long I let this paint dry, we're talking weeks later, those rubber feet in the heat of summer will actually stick to the paint, and then when I pull it off, it either takes paint with it, which looks terrible, or it will leave the rubber feet on the counter, which looks terrible too. And then I have to pull them off and they take paint with them, which also looks terrible. So I have wax paper below the microwave and the refrigerator just to keep them from damaging the paint, especially since this is just finished drying pretty much just now. I just want to do a test fit. You can see the back is open. See the microwave there? The rest of the back is completely open. I might put a back on this side, but I don't really think I need it. I'll probably try to strap down the refrigerator and the microwave at some point because that wax paper means they slide around on there pretty easily. So bouncing around in the back of a 23-year-old truck, I don't want them sliding around. So now I'm going to go out and show the Suburban. Remember that overhang, keep that in mind because that is important. And I'll show what that's for. By the way, this is what those rubber feet do. See? That's from I have a little 12-volt fan. And by the way, again, notice this thing overhangs as well on the end. So just remember those overhangs, those are important. And now as I'm going up here, a little bit of why I chose the Suburban as opposed to getting rid of the Suburban and buying, say, a conversion van or a cargo van. Hey, here's my dog. There's Tasha. The biggest reason is stealth. Let me get shoes on here. The biggest reason is stealth because rusty Suburbans and SUVs and pickup trucks are all over the place in this area. So having a rusted out Suburban like what I have will not stick out in the slightest. And what's interesting... Oh, and it's already gotten cold out here. What's interesting is even in well-to-do neighborhoods, it will not stick out that much. Because a lot of the well-to-do people keep rusted-out beaters for winter driving in this area. I'm in southwest Wisconsin, so if you live in Wisconsin, you know what I'm talking about. Or anywhere in the Midwest, really. Let's sneak through here. Get another light out. So that's the first thing. This thing will not stick out. I could park in a poor neighborhood one day and then go into a well-to-do neighborhood the next day. And then I could go into a middle-class neighborhood the next day. It will not stick out. As long as I'm a little careful with it, it'll be just fine. Another thing I like is it's easy to work on. This is 1992. It has the Chevy 350 TBI in it. Easy to work on, common parts. Those engines in this area are about $300 for a decent one. And they're pretty easy to swap out if you know what you're doing. Another thing I like, storage. Still a little warmer in here. Storage. Center console has storage. Underneath those cup holders is storage. Glove box is storage. This entire cap here comes off and the jack is in there. All the jack stuff is in there. Jumper cables, tow ropes, stuff like that is all in there. It's got trays and cup holders along the back. You can see my fire extinguisher is stored in one of them. I've got room for my toolbox in the back. I keep an spare alternator, all kinds of spare parts in there. Spare fluids, tools, stuff like that. And like I was saying about this, the jack's in there, but that's actually a stock jack. The Suburban actually came with its own tire changing system. A lot of those trucks did at that time. You don't see that as much nowadays. It's kind of sad. And then more storage. If I can lift this up. Come on. I keep my school textbooks and stuff in here. Backpack. Here's my textbooks. There's my heavy equipment and welding textbook there. And then the other one flips up too, but there isn't much in there, just a roll of paper towels. Usually I keep cleaning supplies under that one. Spark plugs and spark plug wires. I need to change those right when the weather improves a little. Now, where's the counter go? Counter will go over this passenger side seat. Now, remember that overhang I said you have to remember? That's for this. You can see that when these seats are folded down, you have this one piece of seat that's folded up against the back of the passenger seat. The driver's side is the same way, only it's just a longer bench seat. So that overhang gives me about an extra 6 to 10 inches of counter space, because I shoved the counter right up against the bottom of the seat. Then that overhang goes over the top. Now I test fit it and took a quick video of it earlier today, so I'll try to cut that in right around now. Alright, so if you saw that, you saw that the overhang is right over that seat right there. And then the other end, if you saw, is over right around where that light is. So it actually fits perfectly in there. It cannot be in there with the third row seat in. And I am freezing. Another thing I tried, here, what's the temperature? 37.8. This is in my garage. Negative 25 outside. So another thing I tried is I tried putting my propane heater in the Bourbon, just to see how fast it heats it up and gets it comfortable. Between 5 and 10 minutes, this thing on low will have the entire interior nice and comfy. I can turn this off, put this back, because I'm going to start heading back in. So I know that I can use the heater and it will work. Something else I did is I cleaned a bunch of the crap out. Some of it is right here, but there's all kinds of crap that I pulled out of this. It's amazing how much stuff builds up in the vehicle over the course of the winter. Again, if you live in a snow area, you probably know what I'm talking about, because you tend to just kind of throw stuff in the vehicle and not think of it. And it does have a snowplow. That's another thing that's good with the snowplow mount on here. It looks like it's a vehicle that's being used for someone's business, because there are a lot of do-it-yourself snowplow contractors in this area. So the snowplow mount actually makes it You'd think, you know, if I was living down south, this would stick out like a sore thumb. But up here in Wisconsin, trying to van dwell, this actually I would consider an asset. Because it's not uncommon to sometimes see snowplow rusted out vehicles parked in front of businesses and stuff. Because a lot of businesses just have their own crappy snowplow vehicles. So again, that's more of the sell factor. Now I'm going to go back in where it's a little warmer. So I just thought I'd kind of share that with you. And just let you know, I'm kind of thinking about going this route. I do use the Suburban for camping, so the modifications I do will be in use no matter what. Whether I decide to be van dwelling or not, they will be used. So it really is kind of a win-win for me. Head down in the basement. So anyway, that's kind of where it sits. And I don't know if you saw the outlets in there while I was filming, but I have 120 volt outlets with an inverter in there. So I can run my microwave and everything. So yeah, hope this wasn't too long or too boring. Definitely let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, any comments, criticisms, anything that I actually got right, anything like that at all. I'm happy to hear anything constructive, because I'm just kind of starting out with this and I'm just considering it. Just thinking about it. Like I said, it's just a possibility. So anyway, thanks for sitting through this. Thanks for watching. And I'll try to update this as I go on. Probably not much right now with it being so cold out, but once the weather warms up, I'll definitely try to update on this. So I'll see you in the next video.